sleep well, and so you know, he just knows like, might be 3 o'clock in the morning. He'll be laying there, and all of a sudden.
Hello. Hi. We're about to start here. Welcome. I'm Catherine Rubin. I'm Assistant Regional Librarian at the North Carolina Library for the Blind and Physically Handicapped. And first of all, I'd like to thank State Librarian Cal Shepard for being here today, and she's going to welcome you.
Hi, everybody. I just love these programs. I try not to miss one. I think the Library for the Blind staff do a fabulous job of putting together interesting programs all the time, and I'm very happy to be here with you today, and I'm going to listen hard because I always need travel tips. And I want to say I think you're going to learn a lot from Liani, too, about the accessibility features of this museum. So you've got a great program in front of you. Welcome.
Thank you. And thanks to our speakers, patrons John DeLuca and Bob Kennedy, and Liani Yirka, the curator of special populations at the museum. And also thanks to the distance learning staff of the North Carolina Museum of Natural Sciences, Katie Smith and Matt Zayer, and the museum staff here for their help in planning this program and providing it via YouTube, our first streamed program today. And thanks so much to all of you for being here. So first, a few housekeeping tips or details. As I mentioned, this program is being videotaped. If you need to use the restroom or anything, you can if you just raise your hand. Heather is going to be at the doorway, and she can assist you in getting to the restroom. Our basic agenda is that we'll have John DeLuca speak and Bob, and then Liani will do the demo of the BlindSquare navigation system in this building. So for John DeLuca is our first speaker, and he's going to talk about his cruise to the British Isles and give tips on taking cruises. He grew up in Wayne County near Goldsboro and attended the Governor Moorhead School from 1962 until graduation in the spring of 1974. He received an undergraduate degree from Duke and a law degree from Stanford. He worked for the state of North Carolina in legal and administrative roles from 1982 until 2010. His final positions were as Director of Division of Services for the Blind and Deputy Commissioner with the Industrial Commission. His hobbies include music, sports, reading, of course, dining, and travel. So here's John.
Good morning, everyone. You know, some people fear public speaking, and I don't really do that. But today is a little different from the norm for me. The time that I spend today with my wife Sandy will be the highest highlight of the day. She's there in the front row. But this experience will be the second highest point of my day. Of course, that has something to do with the fact that this afternoon I get to spend some quality time with my dentist. So this trumps that. Gosh, did I say that word this year? This beats that quite easily. What I want to do today is talk some about cruising generally, and then a little bit about this cruise that we took last year to the British Isles. I debated about how to allocate most of my time, and I thought I would talk about cruising generally a little bit more, just because there might be some helpful information in there for you all, particularly those of you, if there are any, who have not taken a cruise before. Sandy and I have been fortunate enough to do a few cruises. We've learned some. There's a lot we don't know. But what we have learned, I am most happy to share with you. And I think the first thing we should clarify is what cruising is and what it is not. It is not riding up and down the streets of Benson, North Carolina on a Friday night. As much fun as that might be, I know nothing about it, so I am certainly not an expert on that. The other thing to think about before we even talk about cruising in much detail is whether or not cruising is something that even has remote interest for you. For example, if you're somebody who doesn't want to be further away from shore than you can swim, cruising is probably not the vacation of your dreams. And if your idea of where to spend the night is right in your own home, cruising is probably not best suited for you either. And if you really don't care to rub elbows with more than a few people, well, you might think about something other than cruising as your vacation. But let's say that you overcome all those hurdles. We'll assume that cruising might at least be a possibility for you. I'm going to first identify some factors to think about, and what you will quickly discover is that there is a lot of interplay between these factors, but the ones that I would list would be time of year, destinations, cost, length of cruise, the cruise experience that you're looking for, and ultimately the cruise line that you want to use. And as I said, there will be a lot of overlap in relationship between these, so some of the themes that you hear will come up multiple times. And with respect to time of year, the first thing to do is to think about when your preferred time is, the time that if you can go, when you would most like to go. Then you have to assess what flexibility you have. If you can't find what you want when you want it, how flexible are you? And then you think about the times that you know you absolutely cannot go. And it probably seems obvious, but the more flexible you are in when you can go, it opens up more possibilities to you, but in some ways it complicates things a little bit. If you know a very specific time window that you're shooting for, it can help you narrow down your search. Now let's talk about destinations for a second. Here again, there is a relationship to time. If you want to go to Alaska, you don't want to go in December. In fact, the cruise season in Alaska runs usually from about sometime in May to, at the latest, early September. On the other hand, if you want to go to the Caribbean, you have a much wider time window. But at least for me, if I'm going to the Caribbean, I want to go in the winter to escape the cold here. You could go in the summer, but if I'm going to roast, I just as soon not pay to do it by going there. I might as well do it here. In thinking about destination, of course, you also have to think about getting to the port from which you're sailing and getting home from the port where you disembark. Sometimes they're the same, but sometimes they're not. That time getting to the port and how you will get there has to be factored into your overall cruise experience. Let's talk about one of the real key factors, and that's cost. And cost is really connected to everything. It's connected to time of year. In some instances, when you go to on a particular cruise, on a particular destination, will have a lot to do with cost. If you go in the peak of the season, that's going to impact cost in a way that is good for the cruise line, but maybe not so good for you. For example, if you want to go to Alaska, if you go in that peak, the June, July, early August time, you're probably going to pay more than if you go at the very beginning or very end of the season. And this would seem obvious, I suppose, but the length of your cruise is also a factor in cost. The longer the cruise, generally speaking, the more you're going to pay. To some extent, time of that you make your reservation has an impact too. You can oftentimes get better deals if you're flexible enough to be able to go at or near the last minute. And certainly the cruise line that you choose will have a big impact on your cost. If you're good with Carnival, you're probably going to pay about as little as you can for a cruise. If you want to be on the luxury end, and we'll talk about this a little bit more, of course your cost is going to generally be significantly increased. Talking about length of cruise now, and as we said, there's oftentimes a connection between the length of the cruise that you're looking for and destinations. For example, we had some interest in a Panama Canal cruise, and most of those are at least 2 weeks long. A lot of them start on an East Coast city or West Coast city and end up on the other coast. One of the ones that we have been interested in leaves from Fort Lauderdale and 15 days later ends up in San Diego. There's a fairly wide range of cities that you can leave and depart from, but you're probably going to end up having to fly to the embarkation city and then fly home from a different disembarkation city. And here again, as we've said, there's a connection between cost and length. And an important thing to know is that more days on the ship is not always automatically better. We have found that after 12 days, 14 days, we're ready to get home. And you can find cruises that are anything from 2 or 3 days long to months and months and months. Now, whether you can afford one of those months and months and months cruises is a separate question, but that's covered in cost. The cruise experience that you're looking for is another important thing to think about. If you want luxury, it's out there. You'll pay for it, but it's out there. So, if you want a theme cruise, and we've done a lot of theme cruises, they're out there. We've done a couple country music related cruises. We've done a couple baseball related cruises. I'm a mostly long-suffering Philadelphia Phillies fan, and their bad years far outnumber their good years. They have had a few good years, but right now, well, last year, for example, they achieved the worst record in Major League Baseball. So it seems like their good years are well into the rearview mirror. But hope springs eternal, especially in the spring. If food is an important consideration for you, that's something that you can research and select for. One of the things you hear about cruises is that it's never-ending food, and that's true. But never-ending food doesn't automatically equate to never-ending good food. There's a lot of average food on cruise ships. And the thing that Sandy and I have found is that any food tastes a lot better if you're at least a little bit hungry. When you're totally full, no food tastes particularly good to me. The kind of excursions you want is another significant point. Some cruise lines focus more on adventure cruises. Some have a broader array of things, usually that include some more strenuous or more active things, and all the way to the other end of the spectrum, which is getting on a bus for 2 hours and seeing the sights. Size of ship that appeals to you is another factor to think about when you think about your experience. There are mega ships out there that are really like small cities that carry several thousand passengers, as well as not quite an equal crew, but thousands of crew members as well. We've never been on a ship that big. The biggest cruise liner that we have been on was Celebrity Silhouette, which we took this past January, and it had almost 3,000 people, passengers, as well as a crew of a couple thousand, I think it was. So we were curious how we would react to that. The biggest ship that we had been on before that time had less than 2,000 passengers. And in this particular instance, we didn't really notice a whole lot of difference. But we have not been on what I would call a mega ship, so we don't know how we'd like that. To some extent, cruise lines offer disability-related services. We don't have a lot of experience with that, so I can just give you a couple of anecdotes. On the British Isles cruise, and most of the other cruises, we haven't really found much that was related or geared toward addressing one's disability. On one particular cruise, we did have something that had never happened on any of the other ones that we had taken. At the very beginning of the cruise, we learned that there was a couple, both of which had guide dogs. And so we had been on cruises with people who had guide dogs before, but what I'm about to tell you had never happened. Right at the beginning of the cruise, the captain came on the intercom and said, "Ladies and gentlemen, we have a couple of guests with us on this cruise who have guide dogs. Don't pet the guide dogs. Don't feed the guide dogs." And I said, Well, and as it turned out, we met that couple, and they had asked the captain to make the announcement, and he did. We had just never kind of experienced that before. On our most recent cruise, they did provide large print activity logs and menus, and they were very helpful. And since that time, we heard about one situation where a friend of ours' husband got a call from the Princess Cruise Line asking if he would provide audio descriptions on the cruise. And that was kind of curious for us. We weren't sure exactly what that might entail, what they had in mind, whether it would be on excursions or shows or just what. And as it turned out, he didn't pursue it because they were calling him about a cruise that started the next day. And so there wasn't a whole lot of lead time. Now, let's talk about cruise lines. And I think we really get into some meat here. Of course, as I've told you before, the cruise line you choose will have a lot to do with your cost. Carnival, to my information, is about the cheapest of the major cruise lines, generally speaking. Some of the most expensive that I know about are the Silver Seas and Seabourn. And we have not been on those high-dollar cruises. Azamara is also a top-end cruise line, I think. And there are others. Really, the thing to know is that there are companies at almost every price point along the spectrum, and it depends a lot on the experience that you want, the money that you have to devote to the vacation. Interestingly enough, there are companies who have multiple cruise lines, and they try to service the different price points. For example, Royal Caribbean has Royal Caribbean, interestingly enough, and that is their lower end. Not to say that it's not nice. We haven't been on that one, but that is probably their lowest price point cruise line that I know about. Their midpoint one is Celebrity, And we did cruise with them, and we didn't really know what to expect from it, but we were pleasantly surprised. And actually, we have booked a second celebrity cruise for next year. Now, how in the world do you figure out what you want to do with choosing cruise lines and even destinations? Like almost everything in life, talking with friends who have cruised has value. Probably the background in cruising that your friends might have would be relevant. And also, it's always good to have a bigger rather than smaller sample size. For example, if your friends have taken their first cruise, they can tell you about that, but their frame of reference won't be as broad, probably, as someone who has had more cruise experience. Also, if your friend's favorite meal is hamburgers and French fries, they're probably going to have a different perspective from you on the food than, unless, of course, your favorite meal is also hamburger and French fries, in which case. And you can get hamburgers and French fries on every cruise ship that I've ever been, so it's not like if that's what you like to eat, you'll be shut out. You'll be fine. But there's a lot more than just hamburgers and French fries on the ships that we're familiar with. I'm also going to tell you some websites that we have either used or have been mentioned to us. And the first four are ones that we got from our travel agents. And for many of our cruises, we have worked with a travel agent. We have an existing relationship with one. And so I called her up and to ask if she had any ideas, and she suggested some. And I'm going to tell you them. Most of these are spelled like they sound. They're not weird. So, but the one that might be a little less obvious, I will spell it for you. Of course, one is cruiseline.com, you know, and also cruises.com. avidcruiser.com, and that's, it's probably obvious, but avidcruiser.com. Another one I'm going to spell is fodors.com, Fodors.com. And you'd probably want to add /cruises because Fodors is a lot broader than just cruises. It's a travel website that covers a large spectrum of travel experiences. One that's Cruiser told me about that he said was extremely helpful was cruisecritic.com. And he said that you could get a lot of information on the personality, if you will, of different cruise lines from this website. An example he gave was like, if you want to know the cruise line that doctors and lawyers might take, it would be such and such, and you could find information on that and many more kinds of questions on this one. They all, you can get your reviews and assistance picking cruises from these lines. I'm going to mention two more also that are much broader than cruises specifically. One is Costco.com, and one of our friends has booked a couple cruises through that website and found it very useful and user-friendly. We haven't done a whole lot with actual bookings online because we have a travel agent that we trust, and but many people do. And the last one, again, is much broader. It's top10reviews.com, and that provides information on a wide spectrum of topics. Cruises would be just a tip of the iceberg, and my using the iceberg in connection with cruises is purely accidental. Fortunately, we have never knowingly encountered one of those or even been all that close, except in Alaska, and there you expect to be close to the glaciers and that sort of thing. But any of these websites could provide helpful information. A few other tips. My time is rapidly running. We have found it advisable to go to the location of the port the day before the cruise was leaving, if at all possible. We have not experienced this ourselves, but we know people who have gone the day of the cruise, and many of those people had to join the cruise in progress, and that's a drag. We've also found that on many of the cruises we've taken, the food on the last night of the cruise is not quite as outstanding as it might have been on the days leading up to the last night. You know, they're getting down to the bottom of the barrel and trying to use what can be used. And one strategy that we have hit upon is a lot of these ships will have specialty restaurants. And some of them charge for the specialty restaurants and some don't, depending on the cruise line. But the last night of the cruise might be a good time to think about a specialty restaurant. In booking a cruise, especially an overseas cruise, it's good to think about the port or the airport that you will be particularly returning to when you come in from overseas, because there are better and worse ones to do. We have had good experiences in Atlanta. They have a pretty new international terminal. We have had close calls and even missed flight in a couple. JFK in New York was an example of that, and Dulles was a close call where we just made it with the assistance of a guide that cut line with us with, I can't say without the ire of other passengers, but he didn't care. And nobody pushed us or assaulted us, and we made the plane, so that's the good news. Also, in booking the return flights, you have to factor in time for going through customs, you also have to claim your luggage. You know, you will have checked it, but you have to claim it and then recheck it when you get on your second flight, assuming you have 2 flights. And so all that can take time in a busy airport. A couple value tips. Transoceanic repositioning cruises at the start or end of a season oftentimes are good values. There can be benefits in early booking, particularly in terms of choice of cabins. If you like a veranda, with the early booking, you can be assured of getting one. With a late booking, you may or may not. And we enjoy verandas ourselves. There are benefits. Most cruise lines have loyalty programs where the more you cruise, the more perks you can get. Some cruise lines offer airfare as part of the cruise package. And then we have done this a couple of times, booking our next cruise on board the cruise that we're on at the time can get you some perks. One bit of humor, then I'll say just a couple paragraphs about our British Isles cruise. On this, actually this relates to the British Isles cruise. They had a really good comedian, and one of the things he said about cruising was that a common thing to do for people in cruises is to take underwear, that's on its last legs, figuring they will leave it in the cruise ship trash, just not take up space in the luggage on the return trip. And when you do that, he said, on Crystal Cruise Line, which is one of the nicer ones, you will find the underwear that you have thrown away on your pillow, laundered, and wrapped in a package. Alternatively, if you're cruising on Carnival and you throw that underwear away, the staff who service your cabin will be wearing that underwear the next time that you see them. And so Sandy and I got a kick out of that. It was his way of highlighting the difference between the upper scale and lower price point cruise lines. And he was on an upper tier cruise line, so he could say that, I guess. this British Isles cruise that we took started in Raleigh. Well, our trip started in Raleigh on July 19th of 2015. It lasted, the cruise itself, 12 days. We got back the following Sunday. We arrived a day early. We have found it helpful to take a short nap when you have major time changes. Some people don't do that, but it's worked for us. Of course, we flew into London. London has a lot of impressive sights. For example, Westminster Abbey has a really good audio tour that we enjoyed a lot. We spent the night in London. Then the ship left from Southampton. We went to 9 ports in England, Scotland, and Ireland. The Irish places were our favorites. I mean, we liked them all, but Dublin, Waterford, and Belfast we particularly enjoyed. A lot of the port experience will depend on the excursion that you choose and the guide who you are lucky enough or unlucky enough to be with. We had a great guide in Belfast, and we have actually emailed back and forth with her since then. But we took excursions in each place. And the last thing I want to tell you, because my time is probably past, actually, is we saw something on our last excursion that we had never seen before. And it was really curious. It was a passenger revolt. The cruise excursion material said that the cruise, this particular excursion would be over at 6 o'clock. And so that's what everybody was expecting. And when we got on the bus, our guide said, "We will have you back by 7 o'clock. And immediately you could hear a murmur up and down the rows of the bus. And somebody said, "Well, what if we all agree to get back early? Can we get back early?" No. And that was kind of surprising and just how blunt it was. And so you would have been amazed by the muttering and the anger. I mean, we thought it was really kind of curious and interesting and novel, but there were some people who were really furious because they had dinner reservations. And anyway, as it turned out, we got back not too long after 6. She did mellow a little bit, but when we got off the bus, we heard her on the phone saying, "I had the worst experience of my guiding life." So it was just something that was pretty unique. I know I don't have much time, but are there any questions?
John, I don't have a question, so I thought I'd make a comment. Our daughter works on a cruise ship. She's a librarian on the cruise ship, and I asked her, was there anything that came up as a particular issue that people might not be interested in? And one of her primary issues, the computers happen to be in the library, and apparently, obviously, the computers and the internet are on satellite, and that is often very sketchy when you can get it at all. But a big problem is that the internet is extremely expensive. I mean, we're talking 75 cents a minute. It's very expensive. You log on and you log off. Well, people, especially people with mobile devices who are not in the library for Angus assisting them, and she's not really working with them, forget to log off. And you want unhappy revolt? She said, "Mom, I've never had people just yell at me before. They'll come in." She said, "I understand why they're upset because they'll have a $250 internet bill. And they're taking every dollar out on her, wanting her to take it off, which she can't do." So
Well,
that is one thing that she has run into.
Well, that's an interesting point, and one that we haven't encountered because, to the maximum extent possible, we try to divorce ourselves from the outside world, news, bill collectors, all those folks, when we're on the ship. So we have not really encountered that, but I could certainly see how that could mess up your cruise. Do we have time, Catherine, for one more question?
Actually, I have an experience I'd like to tell. I'm Kevin Shields.
Could we see if somebody has a question before we do that, Kevin? If there was somebody who had a burning question, I don't think we have much more time, so if somebody did have a question, I'd like to give them a chance. Well, going once, twice, and gone. Go ahead, Kevin.
Okay, I'll make it quick. Back when I was married before, my ex and I took a cruise. I don't remember where we went. This is back in the, about 1986. We got on the cruise ship and we're sitting in the lounge talking to one of the crew members, and he knew we were both blind, and the thing he said was, well, we're not going to take care of you. And I said, we don't expect that. We just want to be, involved and just do whatever everybody else does. But I kind of thought that was like kind of a rude thing for him to say, well, we will not take care of you. And of course, we didn't expect that.
Well, you find people with that mentality on land and sea.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Well, thank you all. It's been a pleasure to be with you.
Don't step on the dog.
Okay, so thank you so much, John. That was very interesting. And next we have Bob Kennedy to talk about his travels to Japan, Mexico, and Belize. He graduated from University of South Carolina with a degree in interdisciplinary studies. He has had a really varied and interesting career. He was a certified automotive service excellence automatic transmission specialist for a Dodge Pontiac dealer in Charlotte. He ran a marina in Florida, opened a racing newspaper from North Carolina and South Carolina. He was a call center director for Wells Fargo and also worked for Sears dispatching appliance repair trucks. He currently has his own business and is making chicken coops for city dwellers who raise chickens. Two of his hobbies are woodworking and golfing. He ranked 5th in a national tournament for the U.S. Blind Golf Association and was winner of the regional tournament before that. And he was an alternate for the 1996 to 2000 Judo Paralympic team. And he and John DeLuca also used to compete against each other in beatball. So here we go, Bob. Thank you.
My helper doesn't want to stay behind the podium. So, I went to my first. Now I used to live near the Canadian border, not far from Niagara Falls. So, if you want to call that international travel, it's kind of cheating, because back when I lived up there, it was 40 cents to go across the bridge, and there was no passport required or anything like that. We used to drag a race car across. Now, if you want to have some fun in customs, take a race car with you. They counted every tire. They made us write down all the tools we brought in, all the cans of oil and so on like that. And then when you go back out of the country, they took inventory of it all. we got fined one night for leaving a tire at the racetrack because we blew it, and we replaced it, but there's no need to drag a bad tire back home with you, and they charged us for leaving it. So that's kind of interesting. But the bigger travels that I had in '98, I went to Japan to compete in a judo tournament over there. It's where judo was invented or born or whatever. And we actually stayed at the Kodokan, which is the school for judo. That it's known around the world, and some of the more fun things we did over there. For you guys that can't see me, I'm 6'3", and so if you want to feel like Goliath, you go to Tokyo and walk down the street. So these men would walk out of the store, and it's like, yes, I am a big man now. Not particularly big in this country, but when somebody rams their face into your chest, it's you do feel like a lot of fun, a lot of different things to that you pick up on the different countries. Have you ever bought clothes at a railroad station? You know, you can buy like Wrangler jeans in a vending machine there. It comes, you punch in your order and it comes out like you've seen the tubes for tennis balls, the round tubes where they put 3 balls in a tube. It's a larger version of that, but they just drop out of the machine. I don't know what you do if they don't fit, but they seem to, when I was there, they had a huge fascination with vending machines. You could buy beer, you could actually buy hot coffee, the soft drinks, tea, whatever, out of the same machine. And there didn't seem to be a problem with age-related, teenagers coming up and buying beer. It's open to everybody. So that was neat. And the probably the most fun that I had was we went on that high-speed train that doesn't actually touch the tracks. And I'm not exactly sure what the top speed was. I know we went up over 150 miles an hour, but on a train, that's really flying. And there, our trains over here, you ride along and clickety clackety clack and bouncing side to side and so on. And this train somehow works with it's on the version of the repelling magnets. If you hold 2 magnets the same way, they snap together, and if you hold them opposite, they push apart from. And it's supposed to be based on that. I didn't have an engineer I could talk to, so I don't know, but I know you couldn't feel the tracks as you were moving. It's a very smooth ride. It's kind of like flying in a plane, but you're not moving as fast and not going as far. But I wanted to take that in when I was there. We went through the Imperial Palace there in Tokyo, which was this is back to the Shogun days, where they had these like street lights. Where the street lights would be over here, they had like chained baskets on these poles, and so I asked them what that was all about, and they said the archers used to sit in them. So it's a little different, but they also, the city in Tokyo is also broken up into districts, which depending on where what you want to do, the nightlife is in one area and the shopping is in another. And a group of us went in and you can rent a karaoke studio instead of actually, instead of performing in front of a crowd, you go in and rent this studio. And if you're having trouble with the range, the music plays for you. If it doesn't work, there's a slide on the wall, and you can raise and lower the pitch of the music so it fits your voice range or makes you sound terrible anyway. And there's not enough vodka in the house to get me to do it again. But it was a lot of fun over there. I can tell you one thing about athletics over there. They are a whole lot different than we are. I had a female interpreter for me, and somewhere along the way, they thought I could get down to 198 pounds for this tournament, and I couldn't. And so I had written to the tournament directors and told them, I'm not going to be in that weight class. I'm going to be in the 220. And somehow that got lost. The whole series of emails didn't happen. So I went in and I stepped on the scale and I was at like 207. And there's this, the lady is standing next to me, and you hear this guy, and she says, he wants you to take off your jacket. And I said, okay. And I hand it to somebody and step back on the scale, and here you are undressing and you got this female interpreter. It just doesn't seem to bother them. And I got all the way down. I'm standing there in my underwear, and I'm at 201 now. And you know, you hear this guy saying something, and she goes, "He wants you to take off your shorts." I said, "Tell him they don't weigh 3 pounds." It's the end of that argument right there. Oh golly, but it is a great. It was a great time over there. I would go back when I don't have to worry about glowing in the dark. But with the problems they had there with the earthquakes and all, I don't want to go over right now. But the thing you have to remember is that you are not only going ahead in time, but it's the international date line. So you're moving into tomorrow on the way over. And I know when we got ready to leave, it was going to be Thanksgiving Day back here. So I left Tokyo at 3:30 Thursday afternoon. I got in LA at 7:30 Thursday morning. And as I told the flight attendant, I said, "It's the first time in my life I've ever had 2 Thursdays in the same week, and don't you know I have to spend it all in the air?" And I didn't get turkey on either of the flights or any of the flights. So, we flew out of LA, which is you know, a little bit longer. I don't know. They kept telling I forgot to check the time, so that's what you know, the actual cruise time. So I don't know. I'm guessing around 11 hours from LA to Tokyo, and it was pretty good because we flew Korean Air, and so the steward that they gave us on the flight was from Korea, and he was big into Taekwondo. So here's a judo team, and we're, you know, well, you in our sport you can, and so it's back and forth, just who has the tougher sport or whatever, and but he did make sure we were fed well, which is another reason I knew I couldn't make 198 pounds. So, but that was a lot of fun. I enjoyed Tokyo, and I came in 4th in the tournament, which was even bigger. So it was kind of fun. And then 2013, my wife and I went to. We had a niece getting married in. You know, they live in Belize, so we were going to go down there, and my wife thought it would be fun to kind of spend some time going. So we flew into Cancun, and you know, that's a very popular destination, and it's really neat if you're on the beach, but you get away from the main part, and then it's a big city that. I can tell you my first impression was we got off the plane, and when we came out of the airport to get a cab, remember I was a mechanic for 30 years, so the first thing I thought of was, wow, this is what it smells like when you light a lawnmower up in your garage. That's the air quality. It was, you know, they don't seem to enforce the pollution laws or things like that down there. So you might see somebody with a diesel truck sitting at the stoplight, you know, dug, 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 and each one of those dugs is a big poof of black smoke coming out the back, you know, and don't go through the cloud. But it's really interesting to see when you get away from what you're used to. You know, over here, even the police are required to have X number of Spanish translators, and we had coming into the airport, we had to fill out this form on the plane, and my wife is doing hers and mine both, and she had a little, can't call it a purse, but it was a little bag that she had credit cards and stuff like that, some cash. It was her version of a purse because she didn't want to carry a lot, and so along the way when she pulled the pen out, the bag got hooked and it dropped on the floor of the plane. And, you know, it took about 20 minutes before we could find somebody to understand what we were saying. Once you go through customs, you're in and you can't go back the other way. It's like a one-way gate. And so we were standing there, and finally this lady comes up and she goes, we told her, it's like, look, we dropped the wallet on the plane. Oh, the plane, yeah, the plane, my money. So finally, they chased around. She found somebody that could talk pretty good English, and they'd come back over, and so, you know, the airport closes at midnight, and we didn't get in till after 10:30, and you got to go through customs and everything else, and so they're cleaning up and moving things around in this area we're in, and this two people that went back to the plane. It was they were gone for over a half an hour, and I thought, well, I've got some money in my account. If we have to, we'll use that, you know. But it was, you know, fortunately the passports. I was holding both passports, so they didn't fall out of my pocket anyway. So anyway, we're in there, and about 5 minutes to midnight their time, this lady comes in. She goes, "We've been paging you," and I said, "Well, there's no speakers in this part of the airport." She goes, "I know." And I said, you know, so they actually did find, they were cleaning the plane, and they actually found the wallet, and you know, you knew things were going well when you open it up and all your cash is still there. So that was great. We went on a bus from Cancun. We just went down the coast to Belize a little at a time. We stayed with people. We went Airbnb instead of hotels, so we stayed with different people. It's really really interesting. You know, you get down there, and winter to them is 60, 65 degrees, you know, and so you don't have to worry about buttoning your house up for the winter, and a lot of these houses, they have open air parts to them, you know, and get down. And we're having a little disciplinary discussion here. This house we stayed in, the first one had the kitchen was like in a patio area, but there was no windows, no walls, and they had built the addition of their house around this huge tree. It went right up to the roof, so you know it was, you know, there was no carpet or anything. If the roof leaked, it just came into the ground that you were standing on anyway. It's kind of interesting architecture for you know, I renovate houses, and no thanks for that kind of stuff. I just can't I can't get into that. You know, if you want me to build you a tree house, that's one thing. You want me to build a house with a tree in it, that's a whole other problem. The main thing you notice in Mexico is you better either be good with motions or you know the language, because there's not a lot of help as far as you talk to them in English. No entiendo. I mean, I don't understand, you know. And I knew how to say that in Japanese when I was over there too. The nandishka, you know, that means I don't understand. And those are things you say, you learn in a hurry, because otherwise they expect you to. They're going to come at you full tilt, and either you catch on to it or you don't. But we went down the coast, and there's as the little towns you go through, the cool things were if you're into open air cafes, there's no end to them. around here, we all know beach, that's what we're going to the beach. Playa is the word in Mexico. That means you're going to the beach. It's, so we went to several little towns along the beach, and I wish I could remember the island we went out to. Took a ferry boat out to this island and rented a golf cart and ran around for the day. It was kind of fun. They had some Mayan ruins, and there was like a little nature preserve there where they had the trees, special trees that that had been brought in by people from other countries and so on. And they had monkeys in the trees, which was kind of cool. You could hear them running around overhead. So, now that did have some of the description was in English, so that was neat when you found something like that. But one thing you'll find, like cab drivers, if you want to try out your Spanish, you can forget it because they want to try out their English. so it's they are some of the few that are willing to go with you in your own language, But the scariest part of that whole trip was my wife was trying. She does Spanish somewhat, and she was trying to read the tickets, and she says, "I think these tickets are to the wrong place." And I said, "Okay." So she gets off the bus and runs back in. Well, she's gone about 30 seconds, and this guy comes pounding up the stairs, and he drops the bus in gear. He's like, "Hold it!" And I go shooting out of my seat, and he goes, "We gotta go." I said, "No, my wife's in there, in the terminal." And he says, "I got to move this bus." So I put it back in gear, out of gear for him. I said, "You're not moving the bus." And so we're getting ready to get into a little battle there. And he says, "I must move this bus." I said, "I'll tell you what, I got 2 bags back there. Go get them. I'll get off your bus." Okay. He's happy with that. So he went and got my got the bags out of the overhead. At this time, I didn't have the flyer with me. I hadn't received flyer yet. I got them in April of 13. So I can't tell you a lot about taking a guide dog to the foreign countries. I know Japan is an island, so you can forget it. You're not getting in anytime soon with a dog because there's a quarantine period. But that's another interesting thing I meant to talk about was in Japan, there are certain customs that they use. First of all, they're afraid of catching something from tourists. So when you go into a public place, like when we bought tickets to go through the Imperial Palace, the guy's standing in there and he's got a surgeon's mask on and he's got latex gloves on, and that's how they deal. They don't, you're not going to touch their hands. If you're going to buy something, they slide a little wicker basket to you. You put your money or your credit card in it, and you slide it back, and then they take it from there. But there is no contact. It's a kind of a phobia, I think. But they've lived there many years, so I guess they've caught on to something. But anyway, as far as back in Mexico, we went down, and there are, as you're going through on a bus, the first thing you notice is there's very, very few stoplights in the cities. You have a road that comes in, and there's a huge tear out the underneath of your car type traffic hump in the road, and you'll slow down or else. And that's how they control traffic as it comes up to the corner. You don't see people doing the aggressive driving like you will here in Raleigh. Nobody's going to beat you through the red light. Nobody's going to beat you through the stop sign. It's the big hump is there, and you watch the traffic coming up to the intersection, and you blend in as you go. And there was, I think we dealt with 2 traffic lights from Cancun all the way down south to the border, which is, it's not very many stoplights when you think about what we have around here. But there was no accident, so it's kind of cool how they get used to things. It is a slower way of life for sure. But as we went down buses are given a little higher priority on the highway, and there was a checkpoint. The military had a checkpoint along. You never knew when they were coming up. It's just you pull up and you're going along, and all of a sudden traffic is slowing down, and you see this Jeep with a trailer behind it. It's got a gigantic machine gun pointed towards the sky. Is yeah, you better hope you don't have any drugs with you today. But then we got into Belize, which do you remember back in February of 13 when you guys back here were dealing with like 0 to 4 degrees? It was a good place to be. It was 87 down there, and in February, and you're getting close to the equator, so you will sunburn in a hurry. But we stayed in a little community called Orange Walk. I know a lot of people like to do the touristy things when they travel, and you go to the big cities, and but if you want to get a feel for how people live, go away from there, because what you see when you go to Belize City or some of the places on the ocean there, what you see is a bunch of people from your country that have gone to see what it's like in that country. And so you talk to somebody and say, yeah, I'm from Michigan. It's really cold back home. So we tend to stay to the smaller towns, which aren't really touristy, and it's more of a reflection on how they actually live there, because the big cities are going to pander to the people coming in and want to spend the money. You get in a little town and they'd like you to spend the money, but it's you don't have all these series of shot glasses and postcards and things to say where you were. And I was disappointed in the money exchange. I thought the stores would be a lot cheaper there, but the things I found in the store were the same prices basically that I'd find back. You might save $1 or $2, but then you got to carry it home with you. And so it was. If you're a bargain hunter, it's not a great setup for you. Okay. Thanks. And we were down there during the winter, so they were burning the sugarcane fields, which is kind of it's a neat smell. It's not a real pungent thing. I don't know how to describe it. Some of the little scented cigars, they smell like that. But you could see the ashes in the air as you traveled around. I'm going to let you ask some questions here, because I can go forever and not get anything said.
Bob, I was curious, did your wife get back before the bus left, or did you all wait?
No, I got off the bus.
So you all
Yeah,
caught it?
I told the guy, I said, I got 2 bags. If you get them, I'll get off your bus. And boy, he popped out of that seat like a jack in the box.
And did it turn out that was the right bus?
No, it was the wrong one.
All right.
And you can't imagine the terror of a blind guy being out in the middle of Mexico, not speaking their language, and have no idea where they're dropping me off on the next stop. It's seeing all the problems with the translation,
Did your dog go with you everywhere?
No, I didn't have the dog at the time.
Didn't they
He-
speak English in Belize?
Yes.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, but
I was wondering, I went to Belize a couple of years ago on a mission trip, mainly to work with the Council for the Blind. When you went to Belize, did you have any exposure or experience to the Council for the Blind, or what was your general consensus of Belize?
I enjoyed being there, but it was a family event. My wife is sighted, so you know, she was my tour guide, I guess. We weren't involved. We were in a Mennonite community, and there's a rather large one there where we stayed. So I didn't, you know, it wasn't a mission trip, but it is, you know, I wasn't involved with Council for the Blind or anything. Actually, in real life, I'm not involved with them either. So I am kind of a rebel that way.
Did you use a cane when you were down there?
No,
Did you have some vision at the time?
no, I had my wife who's sighted. I walked with her, or I can get around on my own if I need to. One great thing about playing judo for as many years as I have, the first thing you learn in judo, the first, I don't know, 3 or 4 classes in judo, it's all about how to fall. You know, you trip over something going forward, you know how to roll out of it. You trip over something going backwards, you know how to fall out of it. So, yeah, it's served me well.
No, I was just asking because I was wondering for identification purposes if people knew what the cane was.
Oh, I don't know.
What the purpose was. That's what I was asking.
We didn't. You see, we actually backpacked because of the travel we were doing. So a cane was just one more thing to have to cram in the backpack. So I didn't take one with me.
Oh, yeah, you had your wife, so.
Yeah, so if you like to travel fast, walk with my wife. She goes 90 miles an hour, and I think that's the only speed there is. She's a nurse. So.
Any regular tourist hotels and things like that in Mexico, and did they speak English if you did?
We stayed in. We used Airbnb to book the places in Mexico as we went down the line there, and the part of the description of the host that you're going to stay with will tell you whether they speak English or not, which was a priority for me. I don't do well with sign language. You know, it's like, and you have no idea what does that mean when he waves his left hand. You know. And,
You were able to find places where they spoke English?
yeah. The description on Airbnb would say English speaking, welcome, or you know, host is fluent in X number of languages. So if there's nothing else, I want to play with this iPhone thing. So
Thank you. That's great. Thank you, Bob. That was very interesting. Okay, so next, Liani Yirka is going to demonstrate the museum's new navigation system. She is the Accessibility and Inclusion Coordinator for the North Carolina Museum of Natural Sciences. She has been with the museum since 2003, when she began volunteering at the museum through the Junior Curator program while still in high school. Since then, Liani held various positions at the museum, allowing her to work closely with North Carolina's Hispanic Latino community and modify educational offerings for traditionally underserved audiences across North Carolina. She has led the museum's accessibility and inclusion efforts since 2012 and works to remove physical, social, and attitudinal barriers for individuals wanting to access the museum's resources by providing an equal visitor experience for all audiences. Liani is driven by a passion for nature and science and a strong conviction that all people should be given an opportunity to experience nature and learn to appreciate the natural wonders that North Carolina has to offer. Liani earned her Bachelor's of Science in Zoology from North Carolina State University and is working on a Master's in Applied Ecology and Statistics at North Carolina State as well. She lives in West Raleigh with her husband and 2 large dogs. In her free time, Liani can be found birding, hiking, reading, or running. So, thanks, Liani.
Well, thank you all for being here today. We're really excited to have you and to be able to host this program here at the museum. I'm going to talk a little bit, really briefly, about the Beacon Project and what that means for our museum, and then I can do a show and tell out on the floor for those of you who might have your own iPhone or iDevice that we can use. I also have mine that we can use, and I have a speaker, so it'll speak out loud to anybody who can hear it, and even if you don't have your own device. So the museum really works hard to remove barriers for our visitors, and the goal of this iBeacon project was really to provide equal footing, kind of an equal opportunity and an equal visitor experiences for our visitors who are blind or visually impaired. Knowing that a lot of how people navigate our facility is very visual by nature, our exhibits are very visual by nature. We have a lot of signage all over, and we wanted to be able to provide that same experience for those people who come and visit the museum, want to learn about what we have to offer, but might not be able to see the signs or navigate fully otherwise. Right, so this way, the beacons provide you the opportunity to not have to stop and ask everybody, what's over there, where's the desk, where's the restroom. The beacons hopefully will speak that out loud to you, and that's the goal. It is technology, so it can be kind of finicky, right? So just keep that in mind with working with technology. It doesn't foolproof anything, and it doesn't change things 100%, but it certainly helps, and the idea was for us to kind of work towards a fully inclusive museum. Currently, there's just under 30 Bluetooth beacon devices within the building that you're in, the Nature Research Center, and we hope to, in the coming 6 months or this year, put the same Bluetooth technology in the other building, our older building. It's just a little bit bigger of a building in terms of square footage, so it takes some time to kind of put them out and test them and play with them. This project was a huge partnership with SAS Institute and Ed Summers, who many of you probably know. Ed has been a huge help and proponent of accessibility for the museum and this project, and also a big partnership with BlindSquare, which is the app that we use to provide this independent wayfinding navigation. BlindSquare has been very, very supportive of the museum implementing this technology, and has been very excited for a museum to do this, to provide navigation and wayfinding for visitors who are visually impaired. Can I ask real quick, who of you might use BlindSquare on your day-to-day? Okay, so I have at least one hand, two. A few of you, okay. So if you have used BlindSquare, and for those of you who haven't, it helps you navigate the streets, right, with the help of GPS technology and satellites outside. And when you walk inside of a building, that GPS sensor or that GPS technology, satellites don't reach inside of our building. Inside our building, you can barely get signal, like cell signal, because of the way the building is built. So getting a satellite signal is out of this question. But the Bluetooth beacons take over where that satellite would normally help you navigate and do the same thing, but indoors. Helps you to navigate from one exhibit to another, from the front door to the stairs or the elevators or the cafe, all places that you might want to go to if you're here visiting. So do you have any questions before we get started and do a demo? No? You can download BlindSquare if you have an iPhone. Currently, BlindSquare only works with Apple devices, so iPhones really, but they are testing for Android, which is great news. I personally use an Android, so I'm excited for them to come out with an Android device. It's most useful for you if you have a phone, because your phone has an internal compass, and that gives you more information when you're within our facility. Right? We incorporated a lot of information based on cardinal directions, if you turn north, south, east, or west. So that's how we navigate our building with the beacons. So if you don't have one, I have one that we're going to use for a demo. Yes. Yes, we have a question.
I'm just curious if this is accessible for deafblind who can't hear anything.
It works with refreshable braille displays, so if you can use a refreshable braille display, it'll work with that, but it mostly speaks out loud at the moment, and that's as much as I know about what BlindSquare is working on currently. And if you want to join me, we're going to step outside. We're going to walk kind of towards the elevators. Probably many of you took the elevators to come up here, and that's where I'll start doing the demo in this small alcove just outside this building, or outside this room. And then if you have more questions, feel free to contact me. I have lots of information on our website about BlindSquare.
Address is 109 West Jones Street, Raleigh, heading west.
Okay, here we are. Front door.
Hall H Daily Planet Cafe. Elevators against west wall of foyer on left. Sedger store against north wall on right. Foyer with marble floor. Open stairs on left. Rear entrance on south wall. Restrooms and elevators against west wall on right. Exhibit space with carpet floor. Corridors run east-west. Shortcuts run north-south. Main corridor to State Employees Credit Union Daily Planet Theater. Exploratory gallery on left. Investigating right whales on right. Information desk and open stairs. Foyer with access to restrooms, elevators, cafe and exit.
Okay, we're here at the North Carolina Museum of Natural Sciences in the Nature Research Center for our live demo of BlindSquare navigating indoors using iBeacons. I'm running the latest version of BlindSquare that you can download from the App Store, and it's version 3.4.1. And we're accessing about 30 beacons that have been deployed within this 80,000 square foot building here in Raleigh, North Carolina. As you can see, the building is, the big atrium there is four floors tall, and each floor is around 20,000 square feet. And we'll just do a quick loop around the first floor, and then maybe go find the restroom and something to eat. So we'll take off this way.
Daily Planet Theater. Exploratory gallery on left. Investigating right whales on right.
How about?
Intersection of main corridor and middle shortcut. Straight ahead. Main corridor to State Employees Credit Union Daily Planet Theater. Science. Nature Research Center. Straight ahead. Restrooms. Ladies to left. Gentlemen to right. Exit south to rear parking lot. Exhibits face with carpet floor. Corridors run east-west. Shortcuts run north-south. Daily Planet Cafe. Straight ahead. Order at counter along south wall on left. Seating on right. Restrooms. Ladies first door on right. Gentlemen second door on right. Hallway to foyer and exhibits. Center store on left. Elevators around the corner on the right.
Yeah, final thoughts, just to recap, is I was running BlindSquare when I was walking down the street, and I walked in the door, and as soon as I walked in the door, BlindSquare detected the beacon that's mounted right here by the main entrance, and started providing the information that I needed to continue my exploration of this 4-floor, 80,000 square foot public space. And I think that concludes our live demo of BlindSquare here at the North Carolina Museum of Natural Sciences in Raleigh, North Carolina.
Thanks, Ed.
You bet.